Hey guys, tonight we begin with something soft, warm, and surprisingly critical to the Second World War: socks. You're in a dimly lit barrack somewhere in southern England. It's early, far too early, and outside the fog clings low to the grass like a shy sheepdog. You're half awake, surrounded by the creaks of steel bedframes and the faint hiss of someone boiling water for the morning shave. Your boots are stiff with yesterday's mud, but your focus, somehow, is fixed on your socks. They're wool. Heavy, itchy, and the exact color of canned peas. You're required to iron them, yes, actually iron them. Not because your commanding officer enjoys pointless chores, although that's debatable, but because wrinkled socks lead to friction, friction leads to blisters, and blisters? Well, you probably won't survive this war, but limping through it won't help your chances. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I love reading that. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll the socks into shape and reach for the flat iron, an actual iron, not a metaphor for mental fortitude. It's old, hissing, and still slightly warm from the guy who just used it. The barracks has a queue for everything: food, letters, even sock pressing. Your fingers are clumsy from sleep, but your sergeant said this matters, so you smooth out the seams until they lie like thin woolen scrolls. The sock thing began as a joke. Next they'll be making us starch our underwear, someone muttered during your first week. But soon, it became routine. Quiet. Meditative, even. There's a sort of soldierly poetry in preparing for the day by folding heat into a pair of socks you may very well die in. You slip them on slowly. There's a moment, brief but delicious, when your feet feel secure. Dry. Optimistic, even. Then the boots go on, and the fantasy ends. Historians still argue whether these morning rituals helped soldiers feel grounded or just gave them something to do while waiting for orders. But you? You're already out the door. The ground squelches beneath your boots as you join the others for roll call. The corporal's voice is muffled by mist, calling names with the half-bored tone of a man who knows nobody's getting out of marching today. You're not thinking about the enemy. You're thinking about that one guy, Evans, who didn't iron his socks last week and had to limp his way through a 6-mile drill with a blister the size of Gibraltar. Evans, you whisper under your breath like a cautionary tale. Your own socks feel snug and smooth. No rubbing. No wrinkling. Perfect. Someone once said the army runs on logistics. They were wrong. The army runs on socks. Later that morning, you're trudging along a dirt track. The sun's doing its best to shine through the clouds but mostly just makes your helmet hot. The march isn't punishing yet, but the hours drag like an old mule. And all around you, men are adjusting, relacing, squirming. It's a symphony of discomfort. And you? You walk on. By the time the first break comes, there are already murmurs, blisters forming, dampness creeping in. One guy sits down and peels off a sock, revealing a heel that looks like it's been sandpapered. He sighs. Should have ironed at M, he mumbles, to no one in particular. That night, you're back in the barracks, boots off, feet sore but intact. You're exhausted, but as you hang your socks over the small wire near the stove to dry, you feel something close to pride. Not for your marksmanship or your radio training, but for surviving another day without a single blister. There's something calming about the soft rustle of wool in your hands. The day fades as your body slows. The others are laughing, playing cards, or quietly snoring. You think about your socks, just for a moment, and realize something strange. They are, in a way, your secret weapon. Your feet ache just a little less today, and you're starting to realize something that wasn't in any manual, lecture, or pep talk. A soldier's worst enemy isn't always across the battlefield, it might just be the blister bubbling under your left big toe. That's what happened to McAllister, and you watch him hobble toward the mess tent like he's aged a decade overnight. McAllister didn't iron his socks. You remember yesterday's march. The pace wasn't brutal, yet. But the road twisted through gravel and uneven terrain, making every step a potential problem. And when your only transport is your own 2 feet, those little problems become big, ugly, pus-filled catastrophes. At camp, you see a couple of new recruits being briefed by the medic. He doesn't speak loudly, but his words cut through the soft clatter of cutlery and mess tins. Blister turns septic, septic turns serious. Then we have to cut boots off. Don't make me do that. The new guys nod. One of them laughs nervously. You see them glance at their boots, then shuffle away, probably to inspect their socks with sudden religious fervor. It's funny how something so small can command so much respect out here. Back on the trail, the weather's playing tricks. Rain in the morning, sun at noon, then damp cold by dinner. The worst part isn't the rain, it's the aftermath. Wet socks rub. Wet socks stay wet. And wet socks become little swamps where skin peels like a school glue experiment gone wrong. Your sergeant once told you that in the First World War, entire units were pulled from trenches because of trench foot. Just foot injuries. No bullet wounds. No shell shock. Just moist toes. And now, decades later, even with better boots and wool that doesn't scratch as much, the risk hasn't disappeared. Historians still argue whether modern materials really reduced foot injuries or if soldiers just got better at complaining about them. You know what works, though: dry, iron socks. Someone on your left groans. It's Jackson. He's young, cocky, and far too confident in his ability to wing it. He thought changing socks was a suggestion. Now he's wincing with every step. You offer him one of your spare pairs, perfectly ironed, of course. He takes them like you just handed him the Holy Grail. It's a quiet exchange. No words. Just a grimace of thanks. You both know it's a temporary fix, but sometimes a good sock is the closest thing to salvation in the field. Later that evening, you're cleaning your boots under a top strung between 2 trees. The socks come off slowly, gently, the way you'd handle an egg. They're damp, yes, but not wrecked. You lay them over a warm canteen, turning them every 10 minutes to dry evenly. It's not fancy, but it works. The iron won't be available until you're back near barracks, but you know the trick: press them between warm pans, fold them flat, tuck them inside your shirt overnight. There's a rhythm to this now. An unspoken contract between you and your gear. You take care of your socks, and in return, they protect you from the slow, creeping betrayal of friction and skin. Around the fire, the older guys swap stories. I knew a guy in Sicily who had to crawl back to base, one says. Blister on his toe popped mid-sprint. Blood in his boot. Took 3 weeks to walk normal again. Someone else nods sagely. It's not the enemy that gets you, he mutters. It's the fungus. That gets a few laughs, tired but genuine. In this war, fungal infections are a recurring character: moisture, heat, and boots that trap everything in. You wonder if, one day, someone will make a movie about you all, and instead of showing guns and tanks, they'll zoom in on a sock drawer. Sleep comes slow tonight. You lie in your cot, listening to the quiet shuffle of someone adjusting their blanket. There's a peace here, in the routine. No artillery, no drills, just soft breathing and the occasional sigh. Your socks hang neatly on the chair nearby, already half dry. You smile. Tomorrow, your feet will be ready. The bugle doesn't wake you up. Your feet do. They twitch first, wiggling their way out of a dream about standing in line for the laundry tent. You sit up slowly, feeling the stiffness in your back, and reach instinctively for your socks. They're dry now. Not crisp, not quite, but close enough. You rub them gently together, fold them, and press them flat between your hands before sliding them on. They glide on smooth, no bumps, no wrinkles. You press the seam just right across the toe line. Almost surgical, the way you do it now. Discipline, they say, starts with the little things. And right now, there's nothing smaller or more sacred than these socks. You used to think ironing socks was just an eccentric military quirk. But somewhere between mile 10 and yesterday's mud puddle that ate 3 boots whole, you started to understand. It's not just about comfort, it's about control. In a world where nothing is guaranteed, where meals come in tins, sleep comes in snatches, and safety is a polite suggestion, the way you prepare your socks feels like rebellion. Gentle, wool-scented rebellion. That's what today's lecture is about. Not in a classroom, no. This lesson comes from Corporal Blake, a walking encyclopedia of Army trivia and survivor of 3 winter campaigns. His topic of choice? Ironing. You lot think ironing socks is silly, he says, standing over a dented field table with his sleeves rolled up and a battered flat iron warming on a coal stove. But let me tell you something, this is the only iron that stands between you and a hospital tent. He pulls out a pair of socks, standard issue grey wool, fraying just slightly at the toes. He spreads one on the table like it's a blueprint for survival. Wrinkles cause friction, he explains, running a calloused finger down the seam. Friction causes hot spots. Hot spots become blisters. Blisters become infections. And that's if you're lucky. You watch, mesmerized, as he presses the sock with practiced care, folding it into submission. Wool holds moisture, he continues. You sweat, it stays damp. You don't dry it properly? Boom. Trench foot. That's when your skin starts to rot from the inside out. They'll carry you out like a wet sponge. Someone in the group gulps. Another adjusts his socks instinctively. But it's not all doom and fungal gloom. There's a lighter side to this obsession. Blake's iron has a name, Daisy. It's scratched into the handle, a little romance to soften the ritual. She's saved more feet than half the medics out here, he jokes. You learn that soldiers once improvised their own sock ironing tools, flat stones heated over fire, the bottoms of mess tins, even pressing them under heavy books if they had access to a field library, which, let's be honest, most didn't. In North Africa, one regiment supposedly used the backs of steel helmets after baking them in the sun. It's not official doctrine, but as Blake says, in war, you adapt or you blister. Historians still argue whether ironing actually increased the lifespan of a sock or just made soldiers feel better about wearing the same pair for 5 days straight. The data is fuzzy. But the ritual stuck. And rituals, as you've come to learn, matter. You try it yourself later. The mess iron's been left near the stove. No one's around. You test its heat with a flick of your fingers, then press it lightly across your left sock. The wool flattens under the heat like a content cat. There's something weirdly satisfying about it. The hiss of the fabric. The faint scent of warmth and lint. For a second, it's just you and the sock. No drills, no orders, no worries. That night, your feet are wrapped in freshly ironed wool, and you're tucked into your bunk with a full belly and exactly 7 buttons undone on your uniform, regulation, of course. Someone down the row is humming. Someone else is writing a letter home. You don't write one tonight. You just lie there, warm, slightly amused, and incredibly grateful that tomorrow's first step will be blister-free. Sleep arrives like a slow tide. Your socks are folded beside your pillow, just in case. You wake before the call this time. Not because of noise, or cold, or even nerves. It's your feet again. Not in pain, no, they feel ready. Which is, frankly, an unusual feeling in a war zone. But today's different. There's a new energy around camp. Rumors of a long march, or maybe a change of position. No one knows for sure, but the sergeant's walking faster than usual and the kettle's boiling earlier than it should. You roll out of bed, stretch your arms, and reach for your socks. You kept them pressed between your mess kit and your diary overnight, a trick you picked up from the Canadians, always practical, those guys. You smooth them flat again out of habit. There's a comfort in the ritual. Left sock, then right. Tug, adjust, pat, done. Around you, the others move like clockwork. Quiet chatter. Zippers. A few groans. One guy's boiling his socks near the fire, using steam to soften the wool. Odd, but it works. Sock law is growing, one sweaty boot at a time. As you lace your boots, you hear a quiet voice. Hey, you iron yours again. It's Dawson. He's young. First real field deployment. The kind who still checks his reflection in canteen water. You nod. He sighs. I didn't. Ran out of time. You both glance down at his boots. He's already twitching one foot inside the leather. That's how it starts. You offer a smile and toss him a small tip, stick your feet in your boots, then take them off and iron the socks right after. That's the shape they'll hold. He looks at you like you've just revealed a state secret. The march begins just after sunrise. Long, slow, and uphill. Why is it always uphill? You pass through narrow roads with hedges so tall they feel like green tunnels. Villagers wave occasionally, but mostly it's quiet. The only sound is the shuffle of boots, some more rhythmic than others. By mile 4, the complaints start trickling in. Something's rubbing. My left toe's gone numb. Feels like I'm walking on razor wire. You say nothing. Your socks are smooth, your boots tight but forgiving. You're not exactly skipping along, but you're not limping either. And that's a win. By noon, you stop near a barn. Field break. You drop your gear, sit against a wall, and yank your boots off. There's steam. Real steam. Your feet are tired, yes, but intact. Dawson's not so lucky. He pulls his sock halfway off and winces. A red patch gleams like an angry tomato slice on his heel. Didn't think it'd happen that fast, he mutters. You don't gloat. You just hand him a small square of fabric, an old sock you cut into bandage strips weeks ago. The medic's DIY blister kit. He wraps his heel slowly. Thanks, he whispers. Someone pulls out a harmonica, starts a lazy tune. Another soldier ties a string between two rifles and hangs socks to dry in the breeze. The camp becomes a brief, bizarre laundromat. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the grass under your legs, the soft pressure of air on your skin. It's peaceful. Until the sergeant yells, "Move out in 10." You groan, half laughing. The moment's over. Later, when you settle into a new camp, it's nearly dark. Tents go up. Fires are lit. Rations appear in brown tins, opened with a knife and a prayer. You eat something vaguely resembling beans and meat. Might be horse. Probably isn't. Who knows anymore? You take off your boots and socks slowly, carefully, like they're museum pieces. There's a small wet patch near the toe. Nothing serious, but you note it for tomorrow. Nearby, someone's telling a story about socks freezing solid during a winter training in Minnesota. Had to break at them over my knee just to get them on, he says. Sounded like brittle celery. Historians still argue whether this kind of sock care obsession really prevented injuries, or whether soldiers just learned to endure the blisters more quietly. But those who ironed religiously, who dried and folded and rotated their pairs like sacred relics, always seemed to march longer. You place your socks by the fire, not too close. You've seen what happens when wool catches. It's not pretty. One guy accidentally melted a hole right through the toe. Spent 2 weeks trying to stitch it shut with fishing line. That same guy later invented a sock drying belt, a loop he tied around his waist, letting the socks flap behind him like a cape. It worked until a jeep ran them over. You lie down on your cot again, stomach full, feet dry, socks warmed by the fire. The stars are faint above the canvas, but you know they're there. Constant. Quiet. Unconcerned with your left heel. You smile as you drift off. The war continues tomorrow, but your socks? They're already winning.
Your dreams are vague, soft-edged things, mostly boots walking through puddles, and an old iron sizzling gently on wool. You wake slowly, wrapped in canvas warmth and the distant crackle of someone tending the fire. You flex your toes. No pain. Success, once again, measured by the absence of blisters. Outside the tent, the world is grey and muted. Morning fog curls along the edges of the hedgerows, settling on helmets and rifle stocks like dew. A small bird hops across a coil of rope and then vanishes into the mist. You pull on your socks slowly, almost reverently. They're warm from where they spent the night tucked inside your jacket. The weave feels familiar under your fingers, threadbare in some places, but still loyal. As you lace up your boots, Dawson appears, hobbling. "Still stings," he mutters, adjusting the bandage. You hand him your backup socks. They're clean, pressed, and smell faintly of last week's peppermint soap bar. He takes them like a relic. "You're a sock priest," he says. You raise a brow. "I'll take that." That morning brings a new assignment: dig-in drills. A trench exercise. Not glamorous, but vital. The field is soft from rain. As you dig, you find yourself kneeling, crawling, bracing your weight on your feet and toes. That's when it really hits: the socks matter most when you're not standing still. Ironed wool glides inside your boots like silk. You can pivot, crouch, press your foot sideways against muddy earth without feeling a seam dig into your skin. Across the ditch, someone shouts and falls. When you look over, it's Hammond. He's favoring one foot, sockless and grimacing. "Ripped clean through," he says, holding up a boot with a torn sole. Socks went with it. You try not to look smug, but you do pull your spare pair tighter. There's an art to sock rotation, and this seems like a good time to teach it. Step 1, wear a pair. Step 2, at end of day, wash it if water is available. Step 3, press between a folded undershirt or inside a helmet liner to dry overnight. Step 4, the next morning, switch to pair 2. Step 5, repeat. It's not complicated. But many don't bother. Or they lose count. Or they run out of clean shirts to wrap anything in. Before long, half the camp has sore feet, and the other half has learned to barter socks like cigarettes. You once traded a chocolate bar for a pair of thick Norwegian wool socks. Best deal you've ever made. Especially because the chocolate had been melted and re-solidified so many times it tasted like rubber. Someone brings up trench foot again, today's favorite horror tale. "There was a guy in my uncle's unit in the Great War," Collins says, sipping from a steaming mug. "Ignored his feet for 2 days. When he finally took off his boots, his skin came off with the sock. A few groans. One gag. You stir your tea with the end of a spoon and try not to imagine the sensation. Doesn't happen if you iron," Blake mutters, not looking up from his own socks. "And rotate. And dry. Always dry." The group nods, subdued. That afternoon, you're assigned to patrol a nearby tree line. Wet terrain. Half-frozen puddles. The kind of ground that tests every fiber of your sock. But again, you're fine. You notice the pressure points of the boot, but they're cushioned. Buffered. One small wrinkle and this would be a completely different day. Your mind drifts to history as you walk. Not your history, but others. Did Roman soldiers worry about foot rot? Maybe not in the same terms. But they wore layered leather sandals with wool inserts, and archaeological digs suggest foot care was taken seriously. A few sources even describe toe wraps soaked in vinegar to keep skin strong. Historians still argue whether those early foot wraps were primarily for warmth, protection, or simply ritual habit. But clearly, long marches and tender feet have always gone together. You wonder if Caesar ever stopped mid-march to adjust a wrinkled sock equivalent. Probably not. But someone in his legion did. You're sure of it. When you get back to camp, the fog has returned. It settles like a second blanket over everything. You walk slower now. Not from pain, but from the weight of the day. You remove your boots. Steam again. Socks only lightly damp. You press them between your mess kit, careful to align the heels and flatten the seams. Then you place them beside a stack of folded shirts. Dawson nods approvingly. You're gonna start charging a sock tax, aren't you? You shrug. Just pay me in dry tea. As darkness falls, someone sings a few bars of a lullaby. You don't know the language. Maybe Polish. Maybe made up. Doesn't matter. It's beautiful. A breeze filters in. Somewhere, a horse snorts. A generator coughs, then sputters out. You lie down, your feet clean and elevated on your pack. A pair of socks is rolled neatly under your head like a cushion. You smile. Not a blister in sight. You wake slowly, the weight of a damp blanket pressing gently on your chest, the distant murmur of dawn stirring around the camp. Your toes twitch beneath your wool socks, those same socks you pressed carefully last night beside your pack. The ritual feels oddly reassuring, a thread of order in the chaos of war. Breakfast is a muted affair. Tins clink open, some containing oatmeal, others mystery stew with suspiciously unidentifiable chunks. The air smells faintly of burnt coffee and damp earth. Someone grumbles about missing salt, another mentions rumors of new supplies arriving soon. Hope, that slippery feeling, tiptoes cautiously through the camp. Today, you're assigned to assist the quartermaster with inspecting boots and socks. It's a task that sounds dull but turns out to be fascinating in an odd, intimate way. Rows of boots line up like tired soldiers themselves, some pristine, others battered and patched with care. Socks, in various stages of wear, are laid out to dry or repair. You handle a pair stained with mud and sweat, remnants of yesterday's march. The fabric is thin in places but still serviceable. You remember that keeping socks in good shape isn't just about comfort, it's about survival. One blister can sideline a soldier, multiple ones can make a march impossible. The quartermaster shares stories of sock shortages in past campaigns. During the early years of the war, there were infamous bouts of sock famine. Soldiers tried everything to stretch their supplies, washing socks in cold water with sand, letting them dry on radiators, even stuffing paper inside for extra insulation. None of it was ideal, but it kept feet going. He shows you a pair of socks knitted by a volunteer back home, the stitches tight and uneven, a small act of love and support from a distant world. You feel a pang, imagining the hands that made them, the hope sewn into every loop. Nearby, a medic talks quietly about foot hygiene. You'd be surprised, he says, how many cases of trench foot started with simple neglect. Soldiers focused on the big stuff, guns, grenades, but feet. They got overlooked until it was too late. You listen closely as he explains how socks that weren't dried properly became breeding grounds for bacteria. Damp wool, combined with the warmth of a soldier's foot, was basically a playground for infection. You pass by a makeshift ironing station. Blake, your unofficial sock guru, is busy flattening socks on a heated plate. He grins at you. Here, try this. You take the iron. It's heavier than expected, warm enough to almost burn but not quite. You press the sock carefully, feeling the fibers smooth under the heat. The scent is faintly smoky, like campfire memories folded into fabric. As you iron, Blake tells you about peculiar sock care customs from other armies. The Russians, for example, reportedly boiled their socks to kill germs. The Australians had a practice of rubbing their socks with eucalyptus oil for scent and antiseptic effect. Each method carried its own risks and rewards, but the goal was the same, keeping feet healthy enough to keep marching. Historians still debate which technique was most effective, but all agree that foot care was a quiet hero in the war's long slog. You reflect on the irony, so much planning, so many strategies, yet sometimes victory came down to something as small as a well-pressed sock. Later, you return to your tent, slipping off your boots and peeling away your socks. They're slightly warm from ironing, edges crisp but soft to the touch. You fold them carefully, place them beside your bedroll, and settle in. Outside, the camp buzzes softly, a lullaby of murmurs, distant engines, and the occasional bark of a guard dog. You breathe deeply, feeling the slow rhythm of your heartbeat and the gentle weight of wool on your feet. Tomorrow is uncertain, but tonight, you are steady. Iron socks and all. You wake to the dull murmur of rain tapping on the canvas above. The weather's shifted overnight, grey clouds drooping low, promising more than just a drizzle. The ground outside is already soft and muddy, turning paths into squelchy, reluctant trails. You stretch carefully, your feet snug in their iron socks. The ritual of pressing the fabric last night still lingers in the warmth and smoothness against your skin. You flex your toes inside the boots, feeling ready for the day despite the dampness. Breakfast is a soggy affair. The usual tins clatter open, canned stew, biscuits with questionable freshness, and a thermos of weak coffee. You nibble quietly, watching as the camp gears up for another march. The rain isn't enough to cancel orders, just enough to complicate them. You overhear talk about trench foot, again. Someone jokes that the rain is the war's favorite weapon, slow and invisible but devastating. The older soldiers nod knowingly, while fresh faces grow pale. You're tasked with checking the troops' footgear before setting out. The quartermaster insists that boots be waterproofed and socks changed. It's a challenge when everything around you is damp, but you do your best. Boots are brushed off, treated with grease, and socks swapped for dry pairs. You remind the younger lads of the importance of drying socks whenever possible. Some laugh and roll their eyes, but you know they'll appreciate it soon enough. During the march, the terrain is slippery and treacherous. Mud clings to boots, weighing down each step. You can feel the cold seeping in despite your best efforts, but your feet stay surprisingly warm. The iron socks hug your skin, minimizing folds that could cause friction. One of the newer recruits slips and lands hard on his knee, wincing but determined to keep moving. You glance at his feet, they're soaked through, and the socks are sagging inside his boots. You recall a story shared around the campfire about British soldiers in World War I, who supposedly used newspaper liners inside their boots to keep feet dry. It sounds clever, but probably more uncomfortable than helpful. Historians still debate whether such makeshift solutions did more harm than good. You wonder if any of your comrades have tried it. A sudden shout pulls you from your thoughts. The column halts abruptly. A soldier has spotted something in the underbrush, a wild boar, startled and charging through the mist. The tension breaks with nervous laughter. No one is hurt, but the incident reminds you that danger lurks in many forms. You take a moment to adjust your socks, smoothing the fabric once more. It's a small comfort in a world where uncertainty is the only constant. At day's end, the camp is wet and tired. Tents drip with condensation, and soldiers huddle near fires, trying to dry their gear. You take extra care with your socks, pressing them flat before tucking them away. Nearby, someone hums a tune from back home, and for a moment, the war feels distant. The rain continues to fall softly outside, a gentle percussion on the canvas. You lie down, the scent of wool and earth mingling as you close your eyes. Your feet feel secure, protected, not just by boots or fabric, but by the small, quiet rituals that keep you going. The morning dawns clear and crisp, the air tinged with the faint scent of pine and dew. You rise slowly, savoring the quiet before the day's inevitable noise swells again. Your feet, wrapped in yesterday's iron socks, feel surprisingly fresh despite the miles already behind you. Outside, the camp buzzes with the low murmur of preparations. Soldiers are packing, checking weapons, swapping stories to keep nerves at bay. The scent of burning wood mingles with wet earth, creating a strangely comforting aroma. Today's mission is reconnaissance, a slow, careful trek through unfamiliar terrain. You listen closely as orders are given, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on your shoulders. You notice a small group of soldiers gathered around a radio set, fiddling with dials and antennas. The crackle of static sounds like distant thunder, a reminder that communication can be as fragile as the fabric of your socks. As you move out, the terrain shifts from soft earth to rocky ground. Each step demands attention, a twisted ankle here could mean hours of pain and isolation. Your iron socks cushion your feet against rough stones, smoothing the edges and preventing friction. It's a subtle comfort, but one that speaks volumes. Along the way, you pass an old farmhouse. The paint is peeling, windows shuttered, but inside you spot a glimpse of a worn photograph, a family frozen in happier times. You wonder about their fate. Did they flee before the fighting reached this place? Are they safe, or caught in the war's relentless tide? You pause briefly, peeling off your boots to check your feet. No blisters, no redness. The fabric is dry, warm, and smooth. Nearby, a soldier offers you a tobacco pouch. You politely decline, preferring the sharp scent of pine and fresh air. You think about the various foot care methods used across armies. Some German units reportedly used a mixture of camphor and pine tar to treat their feet, believing it both soothed and protected the skin. Others experimented with different wool blends, searching for the perfect balance between warmth and breathability. Historians still argue whether these treatments significantly reduced foot ailments or were simply morale boosters. The day wears on, shadows lengthen, and you return to camp under a sky painted with soft pastels. You remove your boots and carefully iron your socks, the steady heat smoothing wrinkles and sealing in warmth. As night falls, you lie back, feet elevated, and listen to the distant call of an owl. The world is still, your feet safe and dry in their woolen embrace. The morning greets you with a chill that bites just enough to make you appreciate the warmth of your ironed socks. The air smells faintly of smoke and pine, mixed with the ever-present dampness of a land still healing from battles past. You sit by the campfire, feeling the gentle heat soak into your hands. Around you, soldiers move with the slow, measured rhythm of routine, the murmur of voices blending with the crackle of wood and distant birdsong. Today, you're assigned to a supply run, an opportunity to witness the logistics that keep the war machine turning. You watch as trucks are loaded with crates of ammunition, rations, and, crucially, fresh socks. You're reminded that sock supply was often a critical issue, with entire companies sometimes sidelined waiting for replacements. The difference between dry feet and damp misery could hinge on a single shipment. On the road, the landscape is a patchwork of fields and forests. The scent of freshly turned earth fills your nose. As you walk, you notice how your iron socks seem to absorb the dampness, wicking it away from your skin, keeping your feet surprisingly dry. You catch snippets of conversation, someone telling a story about a soldier who used to iron his socks on an old frying pan, another recalling how the Australian forces rubbed eucalyptus oil on their feet to prevent infections. You pause at a small roadside chapel. Inside, faded icons and worn pews whisper stories of faith and hope amidst the turmoil. A soldier kneels in quiet prayer, you lower your head respectfully. The war has many faces, but moments like this remind you of the shared humanity beneath the uniforms. Later, you're tasked with inspecting the boots of younger recruits. Many have yet to learn the importance of sock care. You gently remind them to iron their socks whenever possible, to rotate pairs, and to keep their feet dry. They listen with a mix of skepticism and curiosity, but you know experience will teach them soon enough. You reflect on the science behind wool's effectiveness. Merino wool, prized for its softness and moisture-wicking properties, was a favored material. Its natural crimps trap air, providing insulation even when damp. Historians still debate the extent to which material quality versus foot care routines influence soldiers' comfort and health, but both clearly played roles. As evening falls, you return to camp, tired but content. You iron your socks carefully, the familiar ritual grounding you amidst the uncertainty. Lying down, your feet snug in their pressed wool, you listen to the night sounds. The whisper of wind through trees, distant engines, the soft murmur of voices drifting across the dark. You close your eyes, the warmth of your socks wrapping around you like a quiet promise. The dawn arrives gently, the light filtering through thin curtains of mist that cling to the landscape like a soft, damp veil. You stretch, savoring the comfort of your iron socks snug against your feet. The morning air is cool but not biting, a quiet invitation to another day's slow, steady march. You rise, the familiar creak of your boots echoing softly as you prepare for inspection. The routine is comforting in its predictability, the sound of buttons clicking, the rustle of canvas, the faint aroma of boot polish mixing with earth and sweat. You join a small group assigned to repair and maintain footwear. The quartermaster hands you a worn pair of boots and a bundle of socks, asking you to inspect for damage and wear. You run your fingers over the fabric, noting areas thinned by friction or dampened by sweat. You recall that during World War II, boot design evolved considerably to improve comfort and durability. The American M1943 boots, for example, featured better ankle support and waterproofing compared to earlier models. Yet, no matter how good the boots, the socks beneath remained critical to foot health. A fellow soldier shares a curious tale. Apparently, some units believed ironing socks could also kill tiny lice eggs hidden in the fabric, adding a layer of pest control to the process. It sounds plausible but is difficult to verify. Historians still debate whether this practice was widespread or just an occasional superstition. You smile, imagining soldiers carefully ironing socks not just for comfort but as an anti-lice ritual. As you work, you notice how some soldiers treat sock care as a sort of personal pride, ironing socks meticulously, folding them precisely, swapping pairs in rotation. It becomes a small act of control in a world dominated by chaos. You remember the volunteer knitters back home who sent socks by the thousands. Their hands stitched warmth and care into every pair, a tangible connection across the ocean. Later, you take a break near a stream. The cool water bubbles over rocks, inviting you to rinse your boots and socks. You watch as sunlight dances on the surface, creating shimmering patterns. You dip your hands in, feeling the cold rush in. You imagine how, in other parts of the world, soldiers had different methods for caring for their feet, some using herbal washes, others rubbing oils and salves believed to soothe aching skin. You think about the importance of small rituals in maintaining morale. The act of ironing socks, washing boots, changing bandages, these became grounding moments amid uncertainty and fear. Historians still argue about how much these routines influenced the overall effectiveness of troops, but they certainly helped keep spirits steady. As evening descends, you iron your socks one last time for the day, the warm plate smoothing wrinkles and sealing in comfort. The camp settles into a hushed calm, punctuated only by soft footsteps and whispered conversations. You slip into your bunk, feet wrapped in the familiar fabric, feeling a gentle peace settle over you. Tomorrow will bring its challenges, but for now, the simple comfort of well-cared-for socks is enough. The morning air is sharp and clear, a welcome change from the persistent dampness that has plagued the last few days. You stretch beneath the coarse blankets, the ironed socks on your feet a reassuring constant amidst the shifting routines. Outside, the camp stirs with purposeful energy. Orders bark softly across the rows of tents, the clatter of gear being packed and repacked echoing through the morning stillness. Today's assignment is a patrol through a dense forest area known for both enemy activity and treacherous footing. You're briefed carefully, speed is less important than caution and endurance. The feet you tend to, after all, are your best assets in such terrain. As you lace your boots, you reflect on the special challenges soldiers faced in wooded battlefields. Sharp twigs, hidden roots, and wet leaves could all cause slips or injuries, turning a small misstep into a serious problem. You recall a lesser-known fact: some soldiers carried small packets of sand or sawdust to sprinkle inside their boots. The idea was to absorb moisture and reduce friction, though results varied. Some found the grit uncomfortable, others swore by the extra dryness it provided. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was and whether it truly helped prevent foot ailments like blisters and trench foot. As the patrol moves forward, you feel the firm ground beneath your feet, cushioned gently by the ironed socks. The smooth fabric reduces rubbing, preventing that uncomfortable buildup of heat and moisture that often leads to problems. Birdsong filters through the canopy, a strange and beautiful soundtrack for the tent's trek. Every crackle of a twig feels magnified, a reminder that danger can come from the smallest sound. You pass an abandoned cabin, its wooden frame weathered and worn. Inside, faded letters and a broken chair hint at lives interrupted by the war's sudden advance. You wonder about the families who once lived here, now forced to flee or worse. Their stories linger in the dust, silent yet persistent. During a brief rest, you notice how some soldiers meticulously fold their socks after wearing, a quiet ritual of care. You join in, smoothing your own pair, enjoying the small ceremony. You think about the irony that such simple acts, a pressed sock, a folded pair, could contribute so much to a soldier's well-being and resilience. As dusk settles, you return to camp, feet tired but comfortable. You iron your socks carefully, the warm surface smoothing away the day's wear and tear. Lying down, the fabric cools gently around your toes. Outside, the forest hums softly with night life, a lullaby for weary feet and wandering minds. The soft light of dawn filters through the canvas, painting the world in gentle hues of gold and lavender. You stretch beneath your blanket, savoring the quiet moments before the day stirs to life. Your feet feel comfortably warm inside their iron socks, a small victory in this vast, unsettled world. Outside, you hear the steady murmur of soldiers preparing for another day's march. The familiar sounds of boots scraping earth and canvas flapping blend with distant bird calls, creating a calm backdrop to the day ahead. Today, you find yourself assigned to the medical tent for a brief spell, a change of pace, but no less important. You assist in tending to foot ailments, a constant concern in this war. Soldiers come and go with swollen ankles, red patches, and complaints of persistent discomfort. You observe how much foot care can mean. A soldier with dry, well-kept socks often recovers faster than one with damp, neglected feet. You hear a story from the medics about a British regiment that used to iron socks not only to smooth wrinkles but to kill lice eggs hidden in the fibers, a belief that lingered long after better treatments were available. The practice wasn't universal, and historians still debate its effectiveness. You smile, imagining rows of soldiers carefully pressing their socks as a quiet act of defense. The medical tent smells faintly of iodine and antiseptic, a sharp contrast to the earthy smells outside. You help clean and bandage feet, applying salves and encouraging soldiers to rotate socks and dry them thoroughly. You notice how small comforts, dry socks, gentle care, can lift spirits, making the harsh days more bearable. Later, you accompany a supply wagon back to camp, carrying fresh wool socks and boot polish. The routine may seem mundane, but you understand its importance. A dry pair of socks is a soldier's best friend, often more valuable than an extra bullet. You think about the women back home, knitting tirelessly to provide this comfort, their hands connecting distant worlds. As evening falls, you iron your socks by candlelight, the warmth smoothing the fabric and sealing in comfort. The gentle rhythm of the iron soothes you, a simple act that feels like a balm for the day's weariness. You lie back, feet wrapped in warm wool, listening to the soft murmur of the camp settling into night. The distant hoot of an owl and the rustle of leaves become a lullaby, carrying you gently toward rest. The morning unfolds quietly, a gentle light spilling over the tents and casting long shadows on the soft earth. You slip out of your bunk, your feet embraced by the smooth fabric of your freshly ironed socks. The ritual of preparing for the day feels like a small anchor in the unpredictable tide of war. The smell of damp earth mingles with the faint aroma of coffee brewing nearby. You inhale deeply, letting the comfort of routine ease the lingering tension in your muscles. Today's orders send you toward a neighboring village, a place marked by quiet resilience amidst destruction. The terrain promises challenges, muddy paths, uneven stones, and the constant threat of surprise. You lace up your boots, paying close attention to the fit. You know how even the smallest wrinkle in a sock can become a blister, turning a simple walk into a painful ordeal. You recall a quirky detail from a soldier's diary. Some units would iron their socks using helmet liners heated over campfires, a makeshift solution born from necessity. The thought of soldiers carefully pressing socks on curved metal helmets brings a wry smile to your face. Historians still debate whether this was common practice or an isolated improvisation. As you move through the village outskirts, the scent of wood smoke and fresh bread drifts from a bakery still operating despite the war. The contrast between everyday life and military urgency feels surreal. You pause, imagining families continuing their routines under the shadow of conflict, the steady rhythm of baking bread a small rebellion against chaos. You notice your feet adapting to the uneven ground, the iron socks cushioning each step with gentle resilience. The fabric molds to your skin, absorbing moisture and reducing friction. Nearby, soldiers share jokes and stories, their laughter a quiet defiance against the harsh realities. You think about the evolution of wartime footwear and sock technology, how the demands of soldiers spurred innovations in materials and design. Yet, the timeless practice of sock care remains a cornerstone of comfort. Historians still argue how much innovation versus tradition influenced soldier well-being, but both clearly mattered. As night falls, you return to camp, weary but satisfied. You iron your socks carefully, the warm metal smoothing the fabric and sealing in the day's memories. Lying down, feet wrapped in comforting wool, you listen to the camp's gentle evening sounds, a soft breeze, distant voices, and the faint rustle of leaves. The world feels calm for a moment, the simple comfort of iron socks a quiet promise of peace. The first light of dawn seeps softly through the canvas walls, painting the world in gentle shades of pink and blue. You stretch, your feet snug in the familiar warmth of your iron socks, a small but comforting constant in an otherwise unpredictable day. Outside, the camp begins to stir, the low murmur of voices, the rustling of gear, and the distant clatter of a coffee pot creating a soothing morning chorus. Today, you join a unit tasked with clearing and marking trails through dense forest. The path is uneven, tangled with roots and scattered rocks, requiring careful footing. You feel grateful for the extra cushioning your socks provide, softening each step and preventing painful friction. The smell of pine and earth fills the air, mingling with the faint scent of gun oil and leather. You overhear a conversation about how some soldiers used to sprinkle their socks with dried herbs like lavender or rosemary, believing the aromas would keep feet fresh and repel pests. It's an old wives' tale, but the idea of soothing scents tucked inside wool seems oddly charming. Historians still debate the prevalence and effectiveness of such herbal foot care practices during the war. As you move through the forest, sunlight filters through the canopy, dappling the ground with shifting patterns of light and shadow. The quiet rustle of leaves and distant bird calls create a calming symphony, punctuated only by the crunch of boots on twigs. You notice a small cluster of wildflowers growing beside the trail, fragile bursts of color amidst the muted greens and browns. You reflect on how the simple act of ironing socks ties into broader themes of resilience and self-care among soldiers. It's a ritual that fosters a sense of control and normalcy, even as chaos swirls around. You remember how volunteer groups back home sent not only socks but also herbal sachets and foot creams, weaving comfort into every care package. At day's end, you return to camp with tired but happy feet. You iron your socks carefully, the soothing warmth of the iron easing away wrinkles and sealing in softness. You settle into your bunk, the gentle weight of the fabric like a soft embrace. Outside, the forest whispers its lullaby, carrying you gently into rest. The dawn breaks softly over the horizon, painting the sky with pale hues of peach and lavender. You stretch beneath the coarse blankets, your feet comfortably wrapped in the smooth warmth of freshly ironed socks. The morning air carries a hint of dew and wood smoke, grounding you in the familiar rhythms of camp life. Around you, soldiers begin their slow preparations, folding gear, cleaning weapons, and sharing quiet conversations under the soft light. Today, you accompany a unit responsible for scouting and relaying messages across a rugged section of the front. The terrain is rocky and uneven, demanding careful footing and alertness. You feel the comforting support of your iron socks as they cushion your steps and wick away moisture. The scent of pine needles crushed beneath boots mingles with faint traces of smoke and earth. A fellow scout shares a story about soldiers who kept small packets of powdered camphor in their socks to stave off fungal infections and unpleasant odors. The idea of camphor, a natural insect repellent and antiseptic, tucked close to the skin seems like a clever, if humble, innovation. Historians still debate how common this practice was and whether it made a measurable difference. As you navigate narrow trails, you notice how the iron socks help prevent blisters, making each step smoother and less painful. The snug fabric adapts to your feet like a second skin, its subtle warmth a quiet reassurance against the chill. You catch glimpses of wildlife, a squirrel darting through branches, birds flitting from tree to tree, reminders of life persisting beyond the conflict. You reflect on how sock care, though mundane, played a crucial role in maintaining soldiers' endurance. It was one of those small acts that quietly shaped the larger outcome of campaigns, comfort breeding confidence, and confidence steadying nerves. You remember tales of soldiers who joked about their sock irons being as essential as their rifles. As evening descends, you iron your socks one last time, the gentle heat smoothing the fabric and sealing in comfort. You lie down, feet warm and relaxed, as the camp settles into a peaceful hush. Outside, the sounds of nighttime, rustling leaves, distant calls, and the soft whisper of wind invite you into restful sleep. The soft glow of dawn spills over the horizon, gently waking the camp from its slumber. You rise, your feet snug and warm inside your carefully ironed socks, a small but steady comfort in this unpredictable world. Outside, the morning chorus of birds blends with the quiet murmur of soldiers preparing for the day. The smell of damp earth mingles with faint traces of burning wood. Today, you join a group tasked with maintaining communication lines, a critical but often overlooked duty. The path is long and uneven, dotted with mud puddles and broken branches. Your feet, cushioned by the iron socks, carry you steadily forward. You notice the subtle rustle of leaves and the distant drone of engines, reminders that the war reaches even here. A comrade tells you about a curious wartime invention, heated irons powered by small, portable stoves designed for field use, enabling soldiers to press their socks even in the trenches. This innovation, though not widely distributed, showed the importance placed on foot care. Historians still debate how practical and widespread these devices were during active campaigns. As you work, you think about the countless hours spent tending to gear and personal care, small tasks that helped maintain morale and physical health. Ironing socks was more than routine, it was a quiet assertion of dignity. The fabric smooths under your hands, warm and soft, sealing in readiness for the journey ahead. You recall the women's groups back home, knitting countless pairs of socks and sending them with care packages, their love woven into every stitch. Those socks became lifelines, connecting distant worlds. As night falls, you iron your socks by the dim glow of a lantern, the warmth soothing both fabric and spirit. Lying down, feet wrapped in familiar softness, you listen to the gentle night sounds, rustling leaves, distant footsteps, and a soft breeze weaving through the camp. The simple act of sock care offers a moment of peace, a quiet comfort before sleep. The day begins with a muted light filtering through a blanket of grey clouds, a gentle reminder of the ever-changing weather that soldiers had to endure. You rise, feet already warmed by the neatly ironed socks you slid into earlier, their soft texture a quiet reassurance. The air carries a damp chill, mixed with the scent of wet earth and faint smoke from distant campfires. Around you, soldiers prepare their gear with practiced efficiency, voices low but purposeful. Today's mission takes you along a narrow ridge overlooking a sprawling valley. The footing is precarious, loose stones, uneven ground, and hidden pockets of mud threaten every step. You appreciate how the iron socks reduce friction and provide just enough cushioning to prevent painful blisters. The wind whispers through the pines, carrying distant echoes of artillery fire, a constant, if distant, reminder of the war's reach. You recall a lesser-known tidbit: some soldiers tucked small strips of camphor or even dried mint inside their socks to keep feet feeling fresh and stave off infections. While the scientific value of these practices was modest, they provided psychological comfort, something historians acknowledge was just as vital. As you navigate the rugged path, your mind drifts to the camaraderie forged in these shared hardships. The simple act of ironing socks, once considered a mundane chore, takes on a ritualistic significance, an act of self-care and mutual care that quietly bolstered morale. You pause to take in the view, a patchwork of green fields, winding rivers, and distant villages. Despite the destruction the war has wrought, life stubbornly persists in these landscapes. Returning to camp at dusk, you feel the satisfying fatigue of well-used muscles and well-cared-for feet. The warmth of your iron socks embraces you as you prepare for rest. You smooth the fabric once more, the steady motion a comforting end to the day. Outside, the night hums softly, a lullaby woven from the sounds of rustling leaves and distant campfires. The grey dawn unfolds quietly, mist hanging low over the camp like a soft blanket. You rise slowly, your feet cradled by the smooth warmth of freshly ironed socks. A ritual as familiar as the steady breathing of those around you. The scent of damp earth mixes with the faint aroma of coffee brewing nearby, lending a small comfort before the day's tasks begin. Today you join a group assigned to repair damaged bridges, a crucial task to maintain supply lines. The terrain is slippery and uneven, the mud threatening to claim unwary boots. Your iron socks, snug and dry, provide the resilience you need for steady footing. You recall a curious detail: during the war, some soldiers used to lightly starch their socks before ironing, believing the added stiffness prevented wrinkles and blisters. Though modern experts might scoff, at the time it felt like a clever innovation. Historians still debate how effective or common this practice really was. The bridge you help repair is battered but sturdy, a symbol of persistence amid chaos. Working together, the group shares quiet jokes and stories, the simple bonds forged in hardship becoming a source of strength. As you pause to catch your breath, the sun breaks through the mist, casting a gentle glow over the scene. The warmth feels like a silent promise of better days, even as the war grinds on. Returning to camp, you carefully iron your socks, the warm iron smoothing fabric and worries alike. The rhythmic motion calms your mind, and you settle down with a deep sigh. Outside, the night sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a night bird, invite you to rest, cradled by simple comforts and quiet hope. A pale morning light filters through the trees, soft and unobtrusive, as you wake beneath your blanket. Your feet, still warm from the neatly ironed socks, feel like a small but steadfast comfort in this uncertain world. Around the camp, gentle movements and low voices create a soothing symphony of morning routines. The scent of moist earth and faint wood smoke blends with the cool air. Today's assignment involves mapping out a series of trenches that have become overgrown. The ground is uneven, dotted with roots and old debris. You take deliberate, careful steps, grateful for the soft protection your iron socks provide against abrasions and moisture. You overhear a conversation about how some soldiers used powdered chalk or talc inside their socks to reduce sweating and discomfort. Though simple, these methods were surprisingly effective in preventing foot ailments, which could sideline even the strongest soldier. Historians continue to explore the impact of such everyday practices on soldier health and effectiveness. As you trace the edges of the trenches, the quiet whispers of the forest mingle with the faint sound of distant artillery, a reminder of the persistent tension underlying the serene landscape. You reflect on the balance between hardship and care, how the smallest rituals, like ironing socks, became acts of resilience. These small details preserved health and sanity amid chaos. Returning to camp as the sun dips low, you iron your socks once more. The warm glide of the iron soothes your tired hands, and you slip into bed feeling the gentle embrace of warmth and familiarity. The night's quiet hums lull you closer to sleep, a peaceful pause before tomorrow's challenges. The soft dawnlight spreads gently across the camp, a quiet promise of a new day. You stretch beneath the covers, the familiar warmth of your freshly ironed socks grounding you in a world that often feels unsteady. Around you, the camp stirs slowly, the low murmur of voices, the soft clinking of gear, and the distant call of birds blending into a gentle morning melody. Today's tasks are lighter, a welcome respite after days of strenuous marches. You spend time tidying your gear and helping comrades with small repairs. Every moment feels like a gift, a chance to breathe and regroup. You remember a charming wartime anecdote. Some soldiers jokingly referred to their socks as foot armor, believing the ironing process gave them a kind of magical protection. While it was mostly humor, this belief underscored how important these small rituals were for morale. Historians still discuss how such rituals helped soldiers maintain mental resilience amid prolonged stress. As the sun rises higher, you take a quiet walk around camp, noticing details often overlooked, the way sunlight dances on dew-laden grass, the faint scent of pine, and the soft sounds of nature reclaiming spaces amid war's destruction. You pause to reflect on the journey, the countless steps taken in ironed socks, the steady rhythm of self-care that wove through chaos. These simple acts spoke volumes about human endurance, dignity, and hope. That evening, as you iron your socks for the final time in this story, the rhythmic motion soothes you deeply. The warmth from the iron feels like a gentle embrace, sealing in comfort and calm. You settle into your bunk, feet cozy and relaxed, as the camp quiets for the night. Outside, the soft whisper of wind and the gentle rustle of leaves weave a lullaby that carries you gently into rest. The journey through war and routine ends here, with a quiet promise of peace and the comforting touch of everyday care. The day winds down as your breath slows and the world softens around you. Imagine the gentle warmth of your socks, the smooth fabric soothing your feet, much like the gentle folding of a lullaby. The distant sounds of campfires and night birds fade gently into silence, wrapping you in calm. You've walked through history's rugged paths, felt the weight of both hardship and hope. Now, let that peace settle softly, like a whisper on the breeze, inviting rest and quiet dreams. Good night, and may comfort and calm carry you through until morning's light.